Welcome back to Important Library Stuff, a podcast where library staff share the inside scoop on all the stuff that happens at Prince William Public Libraries. And trust us, it's a lot of stuff. I'm your host, Emily Biggers, media specialist from the Office of Communications and Marketing, and I will be joined each episode by fellow staff members who know a lot more on each episode's topic than I do, which for this episode is our digital library. So without further ado, let's learn together from the experts. Elizabeth Hensley, who as the Material Services Assistant Division Chief at PWPL, selects and manages the resources within the digital library.
Hello.
And Matt McClelland, who as the Adult Programming Librarian at Haymarket Gainesville Library, uses the resources for some of his programs and recommends them to patrons daily.
Hi.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. First of all, can you introduce yourselves by sharing 3 books you love?
I'm going to go ahead and mention I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. That's for anybody who really likes the psychological suspense thrillers with the twists. And I think for people who enjoy nonfiction, I wanted to mention Change Your Brain, Change Your Life by Daniel Amen. The reason I was drawn to it was because of dealing with post-concussion syndrome. But even if you don't have any kind of issue that you think you need to read a book about your brain, it's just a fascinating read, and it really gives you a lot of information that you would be probably surprised by about how your brain works. And a third title is Courtney Crumrin and the Night Things is the first in a series of books by Ted Nafa. And I think it's just the perfect graphic novel for middle schoolers and high schoolers, especially anyone who enjoyed the Wednesday series. So I'm just sharing in case anybody else has a similar taste.
Great, thanks for sharing.
So the first book I could use to introduce myself is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. It is my favorite of his, although I really do love all of his books. But I would look at that as somebody who is interested in reading the horror genre. It's a good entry point because it does have a lot of humor to it. The second book I would recommend is Between Two Fires by Christopher Buehlman, which is medieval horror and one of the best books that I read in the last few years. Excellent book, and I've recommended it to many of my fellow staff members who read it and enjoyed it as well. And the final book is a little bit of a cheat, but I'm going to say anything by Joe Abercrombie, who's my favorite author, and all of his books are great, and I am constantly recommending him to other people.
Thank you guys so much. Diving into the topic, for folks who may not know, what exactly is the digital library? Is it just ebooks and audiobooks?
The digital library does include ebooks and audiobooks or e-audiobooks and so much more.
It's a great resource to offer to patrons who are looking for items that might not be physically in our branches, and patrons can access for free with their library cards.
Awesome. And where can I find it?
These are included on the library's website, which is at pwcva.gov/digital library, or just do a Google search for Prince William Public Libraries and digital library, and it will come up.
What are the most popular digital library resources?
Just from speaking with patrons and assisting them with the digital library, I'd say that the most popular digital library resources that I've seen are Hoopla and Libby.
Interestingly enough, if we go and look at our statistics for our other digital resources that don't include the ebooks, although it's a different kind of ebook, the number one resource based on statistics is Tumble Books, which is our ebook resource for little children that's actually accessible through us and the school system because we provide access for them as well. So we do have over 30,000 uses for this current fiscal year for Tumble Books. Tumble Books is also available in Spanish and French. So if you're hoping that if your child either speaks that or is hoping to learn those languages, that's a great way to introduce them. The second most popular resource based on statistics is JSTOR, which is a resource for accessing academic journals, full-text academic journals online. So clearly we have a lot of people who are doing research, and that's a resource that helps them greatly.
Wow, so Prince William County, Manassas has a lot of children and researchers.
Yep.
That's what we're learning.
Looks like it.
That's awesome that they're using these resources. Thinking back to Hoopla and Libby, which is probably our most promoted resources, what is the difference between them? Because I know they both offer ebooks and audiobooks.
So the interesting way that Libby works is it's a one copy per user model, which is just like your print books. If we've only purchased one copy of a digital ebook and then it has actually been checked out, you can go on hold for that and then get an email notification when it comes in for you. Hoopla is a bit different in that Hoopla, you can check out anything on Hoopla right away as long as you have checkouts available. We currently offer 8 checkouts per month. Just a little news flash, we're going to be switching that number to 5 in January. That's the number that we started off with prior to the pandemic.
I would say that when explaining the difference between Hoopla and Libby to patrons at the service desk, Libby tends to have more of the newer or more popular titles. You might have to put an item on hold in order to receive it, which can take a little bit of time. With Hoopla, there is a lot more, it seems, titles available, and since they're always available, it's a lot easier to recommend them. And I've been surprised by some of the titles that I've been able to find on them, but you might not see some of the newer bestsellers.
And one thing I'll add about Hoopla, it does offer ebooks, e-audiobooks, comic books, as well as streaming music and streaming video. And there is an option for a 7-day pass to access a subset of online magazines. We do have another resource called Magster that offers access to many, many more magazines. But Hoopla does have a nice small collection, and you can with one checkout, you can have 7 days access to the entire collection of magazines. So there are some different formats you would find on Hoopla that you're not going to find on Libby, because Libby is going to primarily be those bestsellers, like Matt said, of ebooks and e-audiobooks.
Do you happen to know the statistics if people use just Libby or Hoopla, or how many people use both? I feel it's really easy to use both. Do you find that that's what everyone's doing?
So we did start looking at the statistic a couple years ago and learned that only 25% of the people who use Libby and Hoopla are using both. So, and most recently we looked at that statistic again, and it actually decreased to 22%. So 1 out of 5 people are only using both of them. And we would really like, if you are comfortable with one resource, to maybe go ahead and download the app for the other one and get that set up and check it out, because you just might find that having both, it just opens up your world quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Overall, how many resources are in the digital library?
There are 98 resources linked on the digital library.
So with almost 100 resources, I'm going to guess that people may have missed some things. So to help show the wide variety of resources, I want to try a game with you both, if you're down. I'll describe a subject someone may be interested in or a goal they want to achieve, and you'll respond with the perfect resource for them to give a try. Elizabeth, genealogy.
The primary two are Ancestry Library, which is available in-house, and then Heritage Quest, which can be accessed remotely.
Matt, language learning.
I would recommend Pronunciator or Transparent Language.
Cooking.
A to Z Food America, A to Z World Food.
Starting a business.
Business Insights, Essentials.
Starting a nonprofit.
Gale Legal Forms and the Foundation Center would be helpful for that.
Finding a job.
Job Now.
Car repair.
Chilton.com or ProDemand.
Arts and crafts.
Creative Bug.
Wellness.
Gale Health and Wellness, and also you can find quite a bit on LinkedIn Learning, Universal Class.
Academic research.
JSTOR, Gale Academic One File Select.
Movies.
Hoopla, Canopy, Access Video on Demand, and Access Video on Demand just for kids.
Literature.
Literature Criticism Online.
News.
America's newspapers and world news provided by Newsbank, Global News Stream, and then we do have individual subscriptions to the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, and Los Angeles Times, as well as to the historical collections of those newspapers.
Online classes.
LinkedIn Learning or Learning Express Library.
Shopping.
Consumer reports, as well as a more local regional guide, Washington Consumer's Checkbook.
Transition from military to civilian careers.
Vet Now.
So I think we've now demonstrated the breadth of the resources, from consumer reports to Vet Now. There's really resources for everyone, and they're all free.
We still haven't mentioned all of them, so there are quite a few. One of my favorite ones is Biography Resource Center, where you can learn about any kind of person, and you can go in and limit by like where they've lived geographically or what time period they may have lived in. So that's a wonderful resource that it's helpful for students doing papers, and it's also just interesting to go and browse around it.
You mentioned some before, but are there any resources you'd recommend for kids or young adults?
I'll give one more plug to Tumble Books. I still think that's a fantastic resource if you haven't looked at it. Teen Book Cloud is wonderful. So if you're a young adult looking for good books to read and you aren't able to get into the library because you're not driving yet and it's not one you can walk to, check out Teen Book Cloud. We also do have a couple resources called A to Z the USA and A to Z World Culture. So if when kids are assigned those state or country reports and they need to look up a recipe from that country and make it and bring it into class. Those are wonderful resources for that. As well as if they're assigned science fair projects, we do have Today Science and Science in Context that can help with that.
I would also recommend Access Video for Kids, and one that we've mentioned a bit already, Hoopla, which has a pretty robust comics and graphic novel section that someone might want to check out before paying for a subscription service to a similar type resource.
Great tip. Are there any clubs related to the digital collection that I can join for a social experience?
There is a Canopy Moving Club, which meets once a month, and it's virtual, where members watch a particular movie picked by the host and then meet to discuss it. There are also various book clubs that use physical books from the library, but also have found the digital library to be a great resource for finding copies of titles for people who are interested in joining. One such is my own book club, Read by Dawn, which uses Hoopla quite a lot.
So another thing I'll mention is that Libby offers the Big Library Read 3 times a year, where patrons can download the feature title without having to wait for it or go on hold for it. And they usually do offer this around May, July, and November. So keep on the lookout for that for next year.
Awesome. So in addition to the book clubs that the library offers, if I were looking to start my own book or movie club with friends and family, why is starting with digital library resources a good idea?
For someone interested in starting a movie club, Canopy would be a great resource for it. It is every title on Canopy is available when you want to watch it. The app can also be downloaded to the device that you have connected to your TV, like a Roku or a Amazon Fire Stick. That makes it a lot easier for people to all be able to check out the same movie, watch the same movie, and it's free.
That's great. And you can watch it on your TV. You're not relegated to your smartphone.
Correct.
Get the full film experience.
And Canopy works a little bit like Hoopla in that you get 21 tickets per month.
So save your tickets for your movie club.
Overall, what do you think are the most fun digital library resources, the most entertaining?
So some of the more fun resources that I found are obviously the ones that I mentioned before. Canopy, Hoopla, Libby are my personal favorite. There's a lot of fun things to do and find on them. For kids, I think that some of the resources that they might find most fun are Tumble Books or Access resources for kids.
Sometimes I find this kind of question difficult because I'm a librarian and I just love all kinds of information. And so just even research can be fun as far as I'm concerned, but I know that makes me kind of a geeky, weird librarian. So I do think that LinkedIn Learning and Universal Class, I think are kind of the fun ones as far as you can learn how to paint. You can learn how to create graphics in Photoshop or something like that. There's just so much there to do. I mean, my husband, I will confess, is the person who cooks in our family, but he found some great cooking classes on both LinkedIn Learning and Universal Class. So I'll have to just stick with those, and I'll stop because otherwise I would just say like all of them.
So even though it's fun, it can still be practical.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Is there a fee at all to use any of the resources?
Not as long as you have a library card.
To give an example of how much you could save, do you think it's possible to save, say, $100 in one day by using digital library resources instead of purchasing the content on my own? What might that day look like?
I mean, absolutely. If you were just even downloading 1 or 2 ebooks, that's $40 right there. I think if you were going to go online and learn how to repair your car yourself, instead of paying a mechanic, that would probably go ahead and put you over the $100. But again, even taking the classes that we talked about on LinkedIn Learning or Universal classes, are easily $25 and up, depending on what the topic is and whether it's a one-day class or something else. I think we've met it with those right there. But Matt, I think you might have some other things to suggest as well.
Yes, I agree. I think that you could easily save $100 just by reading books on Hoopla, on Freeding, or on Libby, or watching movies on Canopy, reading magazines using Magster, or getting help with your homework using Help Now instead of paying for a tutor service or something like that. Also taking a language learning class using Pronunciator instead of paying for one of the subscriptions for language learning.
Yeah, I noticed you mentioned Help Now, and I don't know if we've talked about it before. Do you guys want to share a little bit more about what Help Now is and what it offers students?
Yeah, Help Now is a wonderful resource where students basically from kindergarten all the way even through some lower level college courses can get help with a variety of topics. And they can get paired up with a tutor, and that tutor hours are typically 2 in the afternoon to 11 in the evening, so prime study time, where students can log on, be paired with a tutor for their particular grade level and their subject area, and then it's a live exchange. And say if they need it in math, there's even a whiteboard, and the tutor and the student can both work off the same whiteboard and figure out equations in real time. So the tutors are vetted by the company that hires them. So it really is an excellent resource. And just like Matt said, that can save you an awful lot of money in tutoring fees.
Absolutely. Getting down to the details, how does Prince William Public Libraries decide which resources to add?
Well, for one thing, we look at what is popular in our physical collections, and we're trying to provide an online equivalent so that people do have maximum access. Not everyone can get to the physical branch, but they should still be able to access information and resources in order to enrich their lives. A primary factor, of course, is going to be cost, and also how much usage we either anticipate when we're considering a brand new resource, or how much it's been used if it's something that we're looking at as far as renewing it for an upcoming year.
Am I able to request a book be added if it's not available on Libby?
So Libby does have an option to notify if we are to purchase a title. And so you can actually find titles that are not owned in Libby and then click that to be notified. We do get thousands of those requests, so please do not be too disappointed if we are not always able to get those. We actually don't have any control over what's added to the Hoopla collection, so just be aware, too, that things do come and go in Hoopla, and so something that you found last month might not always be there the upcoming months.
That is good to know. Can the resources be used from anywhere?
In most cases.
Which ones can only be used in branch?
Ancestry Library, Pro Demand, and Foundation Center.
Are there any tutorials or guides for using the digital resources?
Yes. If you're using it from the web page, you'll notice that there's a blue side button called Digital Library Tutorials. This actually will link directly to our Discover and Learn service. If you're on a smaller mobile device, it might just look like a little blue side button with a caret on it. But if you click on that, it opens up all the tutorials that we currently have available for our digital library resources.
If I'm struggling with getting into a resource, can I get help with my technical issues in a branch?
Yes, absolutely. If you are having issues or any trouble accessing any of the materials or the resources, call the branch. And if we aren't able to actually help you solve it directly, then we can forward your problem that you're having to the appropriate department so that we can get that problem solved.
And I would also recommend submitting a web comment, because I know sometimes these problems are occurring outside of business hours, and we are very responsive to the comments that we get online.
What are the borrowing periods for digital materials?
Typically 3 weeks, but we have the following exceptions. Freeding, which is a wonderful resource for accessing ebooks that have been published in past years, that's only, that access will provide you a 14-day checkout period. Hoopla offers the ebooks, e-audiobooks, and comic books for 21 days maximum, and then those 7-day binge passes for online magazines. The streaming videos and music can be checked out for 3 days.
Since you've both spent a lot of time with these resources, and I think you may have alluded to this earlier, but I want to know, what's your favorite resource and why?
My favorite resource is Hoopla. It's always great whenever I am helping somebody and I can't find the physical book that they're looking for to point them towards Hoopla and say, this book is available right now to be checked out, and walk them through the process of how to sign up for a Hoopla account using their library card, and then take them right to that book and assist them in checking it out. It's a great feeling to be able to help a patron like that.
And Matt and I did not compare notes prior to this. My favorite resource is also Hoopla. Selfishly, because I can find so many things on Hoopla. Oftentimes people recommend titles to me, and lo and behold, Hoopla actually has it available. It's really great for audiobooks. I always look for that when I'm going on a trip. I check out Hoopla first because I know I can just download that audiobook as long as I have checkouts available. So yeah, selfishly, I think Hoopla is just a great resource.
In the spirit of Thanksgiving, I wanted to pull out some stories we've heard from people loving the digital resources that libraries offer. We participate in a weekly Ask a Librarian hour on our Facebook and X, formerly known as Twitter, along with other libraries around the world. Last week, we asked which library resources were folks most thankful for. Ottawa Public Library gave a shout out to Libby, and Dallas Public Library mentioned Novelist Plus, which can help you find book recommendations. We also have Novelist Plus in our digital library, and it's definitely worth a browse, especially if you're, in between which book you want to tackle next. A patron from Independent Hill Library also sent the following message to us. Thank you for the access to Creative Bug and LinkedIn Learning. I've picked up a new hobby and solved a software problem I had at work. I've actually used LinkedIn Learning to study for an exam for a commercial drone license, which was pretty niche, and there's online courses you can pay for, but LinkedIn Learning had it for free, and I passed the test with the help from that course. Also, besides Libby and Hoopla, two resources I find myself using constantly are Consumer Reports and Magster. For any big purchase, it's so relieving to get unbiased, unsponsored product reviews from Consumer Reports. And Magster has a lot of magazines for crafts and hobbies. I never really stopped at magazine stands, so I didn't even know they existed, but I was delighted to find out that there are several magazines for my cross-stitch hobby, and being able to access months of back issues, all for free, is a really fun feature. Any fun stories about the digital library, either from yourself or that a patron shared with you?
So I don't know how fun it is for everyone else, but I enjoyed this. At the beginning of the pandemic, I started a book club that was virtual only because I wanted to give patrons the best available access to join the book club while they had nothing else to do at home. And since that has happened, we've continued it, and I've asked some of my members if we ever did want to go to a physical style book club meeting somewhere, and I've heard a resounding no. They enjoy being able to get home from work on a Monday and sit on their couch and log in and talk about a book they read that month, and then be able to log out and not have to drive home. So using Hoopla as a resource for this book club also gave them the ability to access the book at any time. And so I've made it more of a priority to add books that are available on Hoopla to my book club picks so that they are as available as possible to anybody interested in joining. I've also found that when a book is not available on Hoopla, that is for the book club, I have a smaller attendance. So I think that patrons who are joining my book club actually look for books on Hoopla, especially in audiobook format, I found. And I tend to have higher attendance because of that, because of Hoopla, and because of how easy it is to access the materials that are on there.
And I'm going to share a story that came from the staff member at the Montclair Library. She helped a patron who was looking for resources for studying for the ASVAB and ended up showing him Learning Express Library, where you can go and take sample tests on a variety of topics, and one of them is the ASVAB. He actually ended up using that to study, and he passed the test. And then he even went and got a friend who was also wanting to do the same thing, and he brought his friend into the library to show him how to log on and use Learning Express Library. So I think it's really wonderful when we can even, people get so excited about using the resources that they pay it forward, and they're telling their friends and family, hey, you can get this great resource at the library.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway. Even if you may not be able to convince your friends to listen to this podcast episode, you can at least tell them to try Hoopla for one takeaway. But really, I mean, I've always been surprised every time I go on the digital library. There's always like something new that, may have been there, but I didn't even notice it. So it's always worth, a look. Any parting thoughts or tips?
Just as far as the library is concerned, we're always looking for ideas. So if you don't see something being offered, bring it up, make it known to a library employee. We just might not know that it's something that patrons want, and the only way that we'll know about it is if it's recommended to us. Also, I would say take advantage of everything the library has to offer. It's free for you. Don't pay for a subscription service for something that we offer for free.
And I'm going to just share that, we didn't actually cover all 98 resources that are linked in the digital library. So just like Emily said, please go and just spend time checking it out. That would be really worthwhile to do. I'm going to throw out that we do have something called Audiobook Cloud, and that is another resource if you are an audiobook listener. And yes, it can save you money over some of those private subscription companies. And also we mentioned Tumble Books a lot, but there is a dedicated resource called Tumble Math. If you student really loves math or maybe just wants a little bit of extra help with math, Tumble Math books might be the way to go with that. So I can't help but just keep recommending all of the resources, and I wish we had time to go over everything. So please do go take a look yourself and see what you might discover.
Shifting gears a bit to highlight some library events on the horizon. Do you love podcasts? I hope you do. There is a podcast discussion group that meets virtually to discuss them, and each month's topic is a different series. This month's meeting is on Thursday, November 30th to discuss how to win friends and disappear people. You can register for the meeting link online. As a reminder, submit your entries in poetry and short story to the adult writing contest on our website by November 30th. December will be here before we know it. Look out for the return of the popular Holiday Smiles program, where all ages are invited to color postcards at the branches to be sent to an area-assisted living center to bring a little happiness to an older adult this season. The final day for that is December 16th. Lastly, our winter reading program kicks off on December 1st. Stay tuned for our next important Library Stuff episode, which will cover all the details on the program. For more information on these programs and all the ones I had to leave out, visit pwcva.gov/library. Click on Library Events, and you'll find our online events calendar. Thank you both so much for answering all my questions. If our listeners have any questions, we'd love to answer them on a future Ask a Librarian episode. Just record your question as an audio file mentioning your first name and home branch, and email it to libcommunications@pwcgov.org. That's libcommunications@pwcgov.org. The question can be about our digital library or almost anything else, and I will do my best to track down an answer for you. I will close us out with a quote from the book referenced in the episode title, Charlotte's Web, by E.B. White. "You have been my friend," replied Charlotte. "That in itself is a tremendous thing." Thank you for listening, and join us in 2 weeks for our next episode of Important Library Stuff.